Welcome to Critical Conversations. We're excited you're here. We're going to do a couple things, but first, Bob, I want to just, on behalf of the Critical Conversations team and JLN Associates, please accept our condolences on the passing of your deputy.
His name was David Colley. He passed away last week after a courageous battle with cancer, and we're going to honor him next week. The fire department's working behind me out in the truck bay on some things for the arrangements for his services for next week.
So again, please accept our condolences.
Thank you.
On an upside, after our last presentation, I asked Jamie to look at the Spotify numbers, and I'm going to ask Jamie to cover some of the countries that actually listen to that podcast. And this is the mind-numbing part for us. Is well, we know we have a lot of folks in Connecticut that'll watch either live or they'll catch up on it. But Jamie, let's talk about
Let's talk about it. That's right. We've got Australia, Japan, the Dominican Republic, Djibouti, Libya, Ghana, Ireland, Bulgaria, Mongolia, the United Kingdom, Spain, India, New Zealand, Germany, and Canada.
Wow.
And it's actually interesting that there's more people following this show from Canada than from the United States. So that's but our relatives there up on the northern end of the country. So we really do we appreciate everybody who supports us. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jeff Morissette for making sure this gets out. Rob Palmer from the county. Bob is kind enough to sit around. Then we've got the instructors. They send it out. And then the career chiefs, they send it out too. So we really appreciate those folks sending, because you don't have to watch it tonight, but you can get to that link and you'll find it. And all you have to do is go to Spotify and type in JLN Critical Conversations. Listen, tonight's one of the more important safety issues, and it's not just the safety of the public, but it's our safety. It's the firefighter response safety. Earlier today, I was talking with Bob, and we were talking about in New York City the number of deaths we've already had from these electric bikes, and often because of the volume and magnitude of the fire, there's often burns and injuries and collapses and all kinds of things going on.
Yep.
And we just can't, for some reason, no matter what the outgoing commissioner said or the mayor says or the governor says or anybody says about these bikes, we still have people bringing them into their apartments to store them because I guess they're afraid they're going to get stolen.
Yeah, it's the official term is micro mobility, which is e-bikes and scooters and anything like the size of a moped, downward. They're even like skateboards and little things like that. Anything with an electric battery. And New York City early on recognized that they had a problem, but it was like closing the barn door after the horse got out, to coin a phrase. There was already thousands of these devices in the city, and people were using them every day, whether it's commuting, messengers, food delivery, or just people getting around. Because if anyone's tried to commute in a big city, you'd rather not try to do it with a car or a big vehicle if you could do it with something small. And the housing being what it is in these big cities, it's not single family homes with 2-car garages that are detached or tool sheds or things like that. There's apartments, and maybe there's parking underneath the apartments or what have you. So the devices, these e-bikes, get brought into these apartments, and either they're older devices, they're not quality, they're not tested, approved, they've been tinkered with, which the city has found it's been a big problem, and they catch fire. It's a very powerful fire. It's not something that starts small like a cigarette or an electrical malfunction and kind of grows. It goes from 0 to 60 in a few seconds. And I've got a short video I can show in a moment here. And a lot of times the occupants get trapped in the apartment or in an adjoining apartment. In many cases in the city, it's e-bike stores on the ground floor of like a taxpayer type building. So there's apartments above, and the e-bike store on the ground floor catches fire. And before the people upstairs realize it, their avenue of escape is cut off, or they can't get to the fire escape, or they can't get to a central stair, or what have you. And New York City's had one event after another where this is the case. And they were leaders from the early on about trying to get regulations in place on micromobility to say, all right, first of all, it was the housing authority after some tragic fires in New York City housing that said you can no longer store these devices in your apartment if you're in New York City housing. But that's very difficult to enforce because you can't be everywhere all at the same time. So it's like, please don't do this, but we can't stop you from doing it because we can't be everywhere to check all the apartments at any given time. Then the city passed regulation and the state followed on sale of only listed and approved devices, whether it's the batteries themselves or the entire vehicle. So they have to be listed by a recognized testing agency, whether it's underwriters or something from the European community or what have you. They can't just be manufactured in some factory in, East Overshoe somewhere and come into this country without being tested. And then you can't use reconditioned or reconstituted batteries. In New York, they call them Frankenstein batteries, which means you take a battery that's half spent, you put some fresh cells or nearly fresh cells in there, solder it back together again, stick it back on the device and say, okay, you're good to go. No quality control, no testing, no nothing. So in the last couple of years, where New York's been that center of attention, they've started to make some arrests where they're looking for people that are doing this. The fire marshals and the police are making arrests and making news about it to kind of get the word out there. Yes, we're out there, we're doing this. But it's going to take a while for people to see a downward trend in the statistics. If you listen or if you follow the news accounts or if you listen to the FDNY online or what have you, they're averaging 1 or 2 of these fires a day. They're getting good at, mitigating the problem, but they're experiencing, as many as fires as they have in the past, because it's going to take a long time for that non-standard, substandard equipment to phase out and just be worn out and thrown away. It's really hard. They're chasing this problem, and it's going to take a long time, but they're the model of how to handle this from a big city perspective. When I go out and do the presentation, if I'm in an urban area or there's folks from an urban department represented, I ask, have you seen a problem like this in your community? And many of them say yes, but it's centered around the colleges because a lot of the students are using the micromobility stuff to get around, or it's in housing developments where, again, there's a lot of people in a concentrated area and there's no parking, and they bring them into their apartments for security reasons. But it's yet to be seen if all of this legislation and all of these regulations are going to have an impact. It's not going to be instant. People are going to have to see over a period of time. The Consumer Product Safety Commission is getting involved as well. But again, you have to chase down the substandard stuff and prevent it from getting into the marketplace, and that's really hard. That's going to be extremely difficult.
And I think this is America, right? We'll buy something, we'll run it into the ground, and then we'll try to fix it ourselves.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're and as an Italian American, we didn't throw away much unless if we didn't at least try to fix it twice.
Yeah.
And the problem is if you rewire a toaster and you do it wrong, you'll get, you know, a little bit or a little smoke and something, and all you gotta do is unplug it. These things.
Yep. Well, let me show you the video.
Yeah.
I'm going to share
they
my
go.
screen, and I'll. All right, here's the video. This is a scooter in an apartment. So that's the battery beginning to run away, and the father unplugs it. It's too late. So there's times when I show that and people say, well, that looks like something from Hollywood. And it's like, well, no, that's a nanny cam in an apartment. And you hear the snap. The dog catches on pretty early on. That was the battery going into thermal runaway and failing. And the father does what he thinks is right. I'm going to unplug it, but it's too late. It's already gone past that point where the charger is exacerbating the problem. It's too late. And you see, he just barely gets him and the child and the dog out of the apartment. And this was probably a total loss. That apartment probably was completely destroyed before the fire department could intervene. So it's been, a problem. Like I mentioned early on, New York City has been the epicenter of this, and the numbers I've got here are from 2023. There were 267 fires, 150 injuries, and the box here where we're located is covering the number of deaths. I don't know if you can see that there, but where the gallery is there we go, 18 deaths. So the numbers for 2024 will be telling, because the legislation came into play in mid-23 at the city level and the state level. So it'll be interesting to see if those numbers, take off in any shape or fashion.
We should, Bob, also talk about that. This is just not something that you're not done when the fire is done.
No. The next couple of slides will show you. This is one of those cases I was telling you about, where 4 fatalities in the residence above an e-bike store. You see the sign over the top, an e-bike repair shop, sales and service. 4 people died in the apartments above this store. And here's just this is a PSA from FDNY. This is the damage inside the apartment.
Just solid gasoline. Is that lead to the right?
I didn't see it long enough. He's in one of these videos, but I think I've jumped over it already. No, that's not him. That's the fire marshal behind him, and then one of the deputy chiefs. Let me get to this. All right. So, yeah, to your point, Nick, when the fires are over, I'm trying to get to a video or at least a slide.
There we go.
All right, just one more video before we continue. This is an e-bike battery failing under laboratory conditions. Every one of those batteries fails one at a time. So you see those pyrotechnics that are firing off. Those are individual cells inside the battery that are failing.
Okay.
This was at the FDNY Academy, where they put it in a Connex box under controlled circumstances. Trying to get to a slide. There we go. That doesn't have any video on it, so I can talk over it. So you've kind of seen the result of the actual fire. But to your point, when this is over, it's not over. You have to remove the device, remove the battery from the device in an e-bike situation, and overpack the battery in a 5-gallon pail with some substrate in there to kind of keep it smothered, and then get rid of it, because once it's going to thermal runaway, chances are very good that it's going to reignite. another cell or another package of cells will overheat, and it'll fire off again. So if you overhaul a scene and see an e-bike or a scooter or hoverboard or anything like that, and you leave it because you think it's cool, it's cooled off, you've doused it with the mop-up line, and you pull out and you're packing up your stuff, it's probably best practice to take that and leave it outside the home. If you can't take it apart and make it safe, like they're doing in some of these big cities, because they have the overpack equipment from their hazmat people or contractors that will come in and do it, your best bet is to leave it outside, far away from anything that could reignite. So if it does reignite, you can go back and simply put it back out again, and it's not back in the home or in the garage or in the basement. So, and we'll talk about that more when we start to talk about the cars as well. Reignition is a big problem. This was another incident in New York City. This is on arrival. All right, this picture is as FDNY is pulling up. So, their response times are pretty good, 3 and 4 minutes in the neighborhoods here. And you see people in the neighboring apartments are just exiting. This is conditions on arrival. This isn't a small room and contents that somebody's smoke alarm went off, or the building alarm went off, or somebody smelled smoke and called 911. This is when they pulled up after 3 or 4 minutes response time. And that's the first, companies going to work. So look at the advanced fire on arrival, because these batteries go from 0 to 60, like you saw in that earlier video. So it's not something that is slow evolving like we're used to, a smoldering fire or something that takes a while to grow. These things go very, very rapidly. This is talking about Frankenstein batteries. I'm just going to get to a generic slide here so we can continue to talk. FDNY is making arrests on this now. All right, so this is the smaller scale. When we're talking about batteries, there's small, medium, and large as we categorize them, I guess. Small being the things you see on the screen here, everything from power tools to e-bikes, your vape machines, cell phones, laptops, electric toothbrushes, all of that stuff, razors and trimmers and things. Right on through to the medium-sized batteries, which are the EVs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then the large battery installations, which are the battery energy storage. So when I do this lecture in a hall of some kind, I'll say, how many lithium-ion batteries do you think are in the room right now? And if there's 100 people in a room and they're all first responders, I'll say, well, there's probably 200 batteries, because everybody has 2 phones. They got their personal and they have their work phone.
Right.
So we can't live without these. They're everywhere. Take an inventory in your house or at the fire station on how many e-batteries you have. They don't have to be lithium-ion by chemistry. There's several different chemistries that are all kind of in that category. But your cordless tools, your phones, your defib, your portable radios, all of this stuff is all in some form or fashion a rechargeable battery that in one time or another could go into thermal runaway. Here's the chemistry. We're not going to turn this into a chemistry class, but this is just a small example of some of the chemistries that are out there. It's all categorized as lithium ion. That's the general category that we use. This isn't an electric class. These are how the batteries work. Positive and negative electrodes, they're kept separate. And when the battery works, they work in conjunction to generate power. What happens when they go to thermal runaway is they come together. The positive and negative come together. Either the separator is damaged or the electrolyte leaks or something, and they come together and they create a short circuit, an overheating condition, and they run away. There's 100 different ways for that to happen.
And you looked at that separator there. That's not exactly lead.
No, it's plastic. It's a thin plastic separator. And in these batteries, these cylindrical batteries, your cell phones, anything that's small and delicate, it doesn't take much. You drop it, you step on it, or you overheat it. You leave something in the sun on the days that we've had recently. Don't leave anything on your dashboard for more than 30 seconds if you don't want it to melt or burst into flames, right? So anything like that where it creates an overheating condition, or you crush it and the stuff comes together, you're going to create a thermal runaway condition. And I'm trying to find this is some of the causes. Again, we're not going to get into the all of the causes, but just think about what would cause that battery to run away. Aging, it's just old, it's wore out, it's past its life cycle, it needs to be replaced. Mechanical, you crush it, you drop it, it gets penetrated by something. Environmental, too much heat, too cold, you're trying to charge it when it's cold, it's running, running hot. Bad manufacturing, if it's not a quality piece of equipment, going back to these Frankenstein batteries. If it's something that you're doing yourself on your tool bench or on the kitchen table, depending, versus being manufactured at a recognized manufacturer, or overcharge, not using the proper charger. Here's another example. You go to the convenience store to get your coffee in the morning, or a drink, or a lottery ticket, or pump your gas. Look on the left or the right of the cash register, and I'll guarantee you there's going to be a display of charging cords. And they have a couple of different choices. You've got the Apple adapter on the end, you've got the Android adapter, or you've got something with a Swiss Army knife type thing of adapters. And how do you know that it's matched up to your device? You know that you lost your charger, you left it in a hotel room when you were on your last business trip, or you left it in a rental car, or you left it home and you're on a business trip. So you go and buy the quickest one you could find. Is it matched up with the device you're charging? Probably is, but chances are probably good that it's not. So you're not charging it at the rate that the device is used to or accustomed to. What happens is you cause a problem and it overheats, or something inside the device malfunctions, and you have a problem with the battery. So that's another problem that might occur. Quick little graphic on thermal runaway. It only takes one cell. And this is for anything, the smaller devices, the EVs, or the big battery energy storage. It takes one cell or one packet to fail. And it's just like any other fire, right? You have exposures. So that fire in the center, or that overheating condition in the center of the battery pack, exposes all the rest of the batteries and then all the rest of the packs. And you have a runaway, which is, hence the term, the thermal runaway. Just a visual of that one cell in the center going, and those other 5 cells are going to be overheating very, very quickly because of the size of the package. Don't try this at home. I have to say that because somebody will get their hands on a lift truck and drive over a battery and try to do this. But here's an example of crushing the battery. That's in real time. That's how fast it takes that battery to fail. Jump over here. Is anybody taking a business trip or even a vacation to a city where they rent scooters?
I was going to say, this looks like the front of the hotel at the FDIC, but they're not all green.
Yep, it could be any big city now. This is a way for folks to navigate around. It's like a rental car, right? Do you take care of the rental car like you take care of your own car? Chances are, no. You take care of it. You put fuel in it. And you make sure it's not scratched up when you return it. But you drive it like you stole it. Come on, admit it. So it's the same thing with these scooters. You're going to jump on this scooter to go and meet your friends for dinner, or to get to the convention center from your hotel. You jump on this scooter, you pay for the scooter, you get it to where it's going. Do you gently prop it up against the street sign or whatever? No, a lot of people will just leave it where it is, and it gets bumped into and people knock it over. And, to be perfectly honest, on a Friday night or a Saturday night in a convention city, these things in the morning, they're found in the bushes, they're found in the lobby of the hotel, they're found everywhere.
And they're like ants. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. And how do you know you get on the scooter to take it to your next class or to take it to an appointment? How do you know that scooter hasn't been abused or that battery hasn't been abused? These people, they pick them up, they charge them, they put them back on the street because they're not making money when they're sitting in the warehouse. So they give them a quick look to make sure that they're not leaking or smoking or anything like that. But these things get abused. It's just like rental cars. So you gotta be aware of that. This is a micro mobility pack, I guess you'd call it. There's probably 30 or 40 of them there. And there's one more video before we kind of break this section up. But this is a scooter, a food delivery scooter outside of a restaurant. I'm guessing the driver is inside picking up someone's DoorDash Grubhub order.
If we look at the red one.
Yep, watch the red one. Now there's a woman reading a book right there at the table outside. And now she realizes it's probably time to get out of there. How she got away without getting burned severely is just a miracle that she got up when she did. So that's, just another example of these, how fast those devices fail. When they go into the failure mode, it's very, very hard to stop it. You saw that woman had the chance to get up and leave her seat without getting, severely burned. She probably did get burned on her legs before she got up, but
we should. So
I'm going to stop sharing for now, and then we'll go back to EVs when the
not
time comes.
not to get too far ahead.
Yep.
But that walking outside with a dry powder is not going to put that out. Right? It's
No.
You have to think big.
Yep. The scooters will burn out to a point where the fire department can come and finish mopping up. It's done before the fire department arrives in many cases. If it's out in the middle of the street like that one was. If it's in an apartment or in a house or in a garage or in a basement, that is your ignition source, and you've got to proceed accordingly. Put the fire out, and then during suppression or overhaul, you identify one of these devices and say, okay, we've got a micro mobility, an e-bike, a scooter, a hoverboard. We're going to get this outside as quickly as possible. Get a hold of the marshal. Said, hey, do you want to come in and get some pictures before we take this thing out of here? Or we're going to take it out and tell the investigators it was here, but we took it outside because if it reignited, we didn't want to, have to put the fire out all over again. But yes, the chances of reignition are pretty good. With the smaller devices, it's a lot easier to cool them below ignition temperature, but you still have to watch them. FDNY's got procedures where if you can't immediately get it out of the building and it's small enough, put it in a bathtub, put it in a kitchen sink, bring a 5-gallon pail, an empty pail, up and put it in that. If you can submerge it, because it's a lot less dangerous underwater than it is sitting out in the open. But if you have that choice, you can do it. If not, if you don't have, or it's too big to put in the bathtub, or they don't have a bathtub, they have a shower, get it outside. So you can just put a mop-up line on it and just keep it cool until it can be properly overhauled or disposed of.
So that's one of the things we talked about before we started. So as opposed to many things in our world where once we extinguish it, right, we kind of look at it, we'll run some meters and stuff like that, but we don't have a whole big concern. Even if we had taken it outside, right, and we had gotten it out of that space, we just went from a fire, for what I call the ultimate hazmat, but we went from a fire to now we have a hazmat call, because now we have a known risk, a known hazard that could reignite. It is a material. It has to be treated as such.
Yep.
So you had a great picture before. We had all the batteries. So you had the bikes on one side of the picture, and then you had all the batteries on the right. So from, again, what little I know of this from watching, again, too much YouTube, is so either one of the squads will get there, or Hazmat 1 will get there, or both will get there. And it's pretty much a mundane thing to them. They have a 10-gallon or 20-gallon garbage can. They put the speedy dry or whatever the particulate is, throw in some batteries, pour some more, throw in some batteries, pour some more, cap it. Then it goes into the back of the flatbed for hazmat, and then it goes to wherever that is.
Yep.
I was talking to one of the key players from the FDNY in this whole thing. He was in a class down at the academy, and the technology will give you a headache. But they had a problem where they had a bunch of stolen stuff in a storage facility owned by the city on a pier, right?
I remember that fire.
And it went.
Yep. It was a police evidence storage warehouse.
Yes.
And it pretty much burned out because by the time they were notified, it was off to the races, and it was much too dangerous to commit a lot of people in there. So it became a tower ladder operation.
And fireboats. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
But that's what it was all over. That. So again, so here we are. Let's say we get lucky, and the thing doesn't completely melt down and take off, but we get it outside. We still have, this is still a DEEP thing.
Yep.
This is still a fire watch thing. This is still a because it could start again.
Yep.
Matter of fact, it's known to start again.
Right.
And so and how is it going to get handled, and how are we going to package it? Again, this is one of those ones is don't try to be the savior or the end of all be all. You need to call for help. Get them early. I mean, if someone even said the word e-bike, I'd be like calling the DEP or whoever, right? Get them going, because they
get some advice. I mean, there's an example in the presentation where Stamford, Connecticut had a Tesla fire. We'll take it to the next level, and it was destroyed. And they asked for a DEP for advice on taking care of it, and DEP recommended some contractors and a recovery person to come in and recover the car. So on the smaller scale, you can handle it, the best you can. And if you're leaving it with the homeowner, it's best to contact some DEP and say, is there somebody in the area that can come and dispose of these batteries? Like then it becomes an insurance issue. Is the homeowner going to be able to pay for that, through his insurance, or is it going to be a cash and carry thing? It depends on where you are. Some cities, there's contractors that will do this. In New York City, it often falls to the city itself. If it's a small scale thing, if it becomes a big commercial incident, then they have contractors on call, kind of like tow trucks on rotation for the police. But in some small rural areas, if you say, I have an e-bike fire, it was a garage fire and I have an e-bike in there, I pull the bike out onto the driveway and we've overhauled it the best we can, but it's sitting out there in the middle of the driveway and the homeowner is worried that it's going to catch fire again. It's one of these things. What do you do? Well, reach out to somebody and get some advice. Even if you get the DEP inspector on the phone and say, please give me some advice. Do you know some people that can come and take care of this? It may not require a response from them. It just may require some recommendations. But if it's big enough, by all means, do what you would do in a hazmat incident and ask for assistance on scene. And they have the people on staff, and they have contractors that they can call to clean it up. But we're right back to hazmat 101 here. You isolate and deny entry. It's about the simple thing that most departments can do, unless you are equipped with the proper hazmat stuff to mitigate this and put it in a container, seal that container, and have it disposed of properly. If not, then call for help and get some assistance.
So let's take that next leap.
Okay.
So we've talked about small. I'll tell you a true story. I went to a class, and I can't remember where the class was. It was a couple of years ago, but when hoverboards were hot, the pun. Yep. And I came home, and my daughter had 2 hoverboards that she had received as Christmas presents in the living room.
Plugged in?
One was, one wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
So she wasn't around, so I grabbed them.
Yep.
Put them out in the shed. Right.
Yeah.
I said, if she wants to use them, she can charge them up. Right.
Yep.
But like a year goes by. I mean, she really didn't use them a lot. So a year, she was out actually in the shed helping me set up for spring.
She found them.
What are these doing here? I said, they're keeping us from having a fire.
Yeah. The hoverboard was kind of the first one. That was what started this thing. And then at the same time, there were laptops that were catching on fire on planes and things.
Well, we just did that. We just did that last week.
Yep.
There
was a one in the news just earlier this week where
they had to evacuate. It was all white smoke.
Yep.
And they said, leave your stuff. They hit the chutes and hit the main ramp. They hadn't even backed off from the ramp yet.
Yeah.
And what I saw from the investigation was a backpack, and they were pulling the laptop out.
Yep. So it's every day. It's in the news. You do a news search, and you're bound to find something every day, whether it's a small incident, well, not small. It was an entire plane, but a small device, or a bigger battery installation or something running away. It's a common occurrence now, because there's just so many millions of these devices, small, medium, and large, in our society or in our midst every day. So let's go to, not to mention the Tesla specifically, but let's talk about vehicles. Yep.
Was it San Diego who had the first one that really
it was the West Coast. I think it was Seattle, or a Seattle suburb, where
Santa Barbara.
Yeah, it was out on the West Coast. The first one that I remember, I believe that we saw and started looking at it was in Washington State. And the fire department went out and tried to put it out and needed to call for more water, and closed the road for several hours, much to the chagrin of the police department, having the road closed for as long as they did. But then people started saying, geez, these batteries just don't go out. It's not like your average internal combustion engine fire or car fire. You go and you put it out with a few hundred gallons of water, and you watch it for a little while, and you pull it apart, and you overhaul the seats and the insulation and the engine compartment, and look around for smoldering parts, and the recovery person comes and gets it and takes it away. EVs, you could be applying several thousand gallons of water, and the recovery person is not going to take it until it's cold, and the chances of it catching fire again are slim and none. And then you have to tell that recovery person, do not, under any circumstances, put this inside your garage, up against your garage, or anywhere near other vehicles for a couple of days. Yeah. So yeah, that's, kind of, taking that next step. Let me see if I can.
I think the magic number was 35,000 gallons of water. It took them to get that thing cool enough. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that came apart, I think that was actually a New York thing, or where they used to, junk guys are tight, right? So they're going to stack them in there.
Yep.
And is this an electric car?
The electric cars are not new. Somebody sent me this slide. This is a Model T, Model A, whatever. This is a little before my time, a couple years. But yeah, somebody tried it and said, well, if we can't run on gasoline or kerosene or whatever, let's try to run it on batteries. And they weren't very efficient. So it took until 20, 30 years ago before people started to use them again. But yeah, it's not a new thing. But yeah, they're out there. And to your point, Nick, about trying to get water on them, this is a good example. This is a generic EV, diagram, an animation. And the batteries, if this is a full EV, there's more batteries than a hybrid. The hybrid has a few less batteries because there's an internal combustion motor or engine and a electric motor combined. But this would be a full EV. The batteries are pretty substantial, and they'll be low and underneath the car for center of gravity and for maneuverability, and they're very heavy. So in your internal combustion car fire, where do you can see the fire when you pull in. It's either in the passenger compartment, or it's in the engine compartment, or in the trunk. You can attack it. You can get the hood or the trunk open. You can take a window if it hasn't already been taken. Get your water application in there and smother it, drown it. Done. Then you can just overhaul it as you go along. For the EV fires, you have to put the water where the batteries are to cool the batteries. It's kind of hard to do when it's underneath the car. So you're pouring water in the passenger compartment, and maybe 1/10 of 1% of the water is getting to the battery. You apply it on the street and try to bounce it up under the car. You're maybe a little bit more efficient. There's products out there that are like sprinklers, heads type thing. You slide it under the car and it applies water to the bottom of the vehicle, and other things such as that. Some departments will prop the car up using some cribbing and spray water underneath it when they've got the car up at a 20-degree angle or something to cool it down. But you still have to apply a tremendous amount of water, especially if this has gone to full thermal runaway and it involves a large portion of the batteries. You've got to apply a tremendous amount of water. So if you're going out onto a limited access highway and you've got a EV fire on between exits and there's not a hydrant, on the median, or a standpipe where you can tie into on a bridge nearby, you're looking at running water, multiple, trucks out there to get this cool and safe, so you can, get it off the highway to the point where, you can tow it down to a parking lot or an open area somewhere where you can finish extinguishment. That's the dilemma that's facing. Here's a video of one in a parking garage going to failure using a security camera. It's too late at that point. That by the time the fire department gets notified, if there's no sprinklers in that garage, the 4 cars in this picture are probably all involved. Given the jet that's coming out from underneath that car, it's too late. Let's see, gonna move along here. I'm gonna keep. All right, so this takes you to the next, kind of trying to get to the one with a blanket. If I can. This is just another example. The big batteries that you see in the car aren't gigantic batteries in their own right. Some manufacturers use multiple cells, like are in the smaller e-bikes, battery packs, and there's thousands of them inside the car. Other manufacturers use, more of a brick type battery setup or whatever, but there's multiple different types of configurations of the batteries. So this is a test fire, and I believe, all right, so this is one of the sprinkler devices, and then I think this one shows the blanket. All right, so this is another option open to you. This works well in a parking garage situation because you can smother the car that is involved, but it's just like, smothering the fire doesn't cool the fire necessarily. You still have to extinguish the fire. This keeps it from spreading. So this is good in a area where there's multiple cars exposed. If you've got a shopping center or a stadium or something where the cars are parked close together, or in a above or below ground parking garage, blankets are a good option for you in that case. But it doesn't cool the fire. It just puts it out or smothers it to the point. This was that fire in Stanford I was telling you about. The guy pulled off the highway. He sensed a problem. He he parked it in a parking garage with no exposures. Stanford Fire came, extinguished the fire. Here's the aftermath, but now you've got to pick up that mess. Look at all the cells that have been freed from the battery pack as a result of the fire. You see them in the pictures here. So when the recovery company came, you see the upper picture there. The car has been picked up off the battery pack. The battery pack remains. All of these cells are sitting there now, all have to be recovered by the recovery company. So the ones that were loose, the hazmat contractor had to pick them up one by one as the recovery company took the rest of the vehicle.
Wow.
So that's very time consuming. This is a quick video. You want to have anything else before I show this video, Nick? Before I could just keep rambling on here if you wanted to.
Well, let's do this one, and then I want to talk about the dumpster.
Okay. This is a video from the Czech Republic. This is a fire in a parking garage, an EV in a parking garage.
Is that a fan, Bob?
Yes. Yep. They're pressurizing the stairwell at the ramp that they're going down. So now you'll see pictures from inside here shortly. So that right there is a water lance. You're gonna see that's a water lance. That's a high pressure water nozzle that they're going to use they're using it at the moment right there. That firefighter's using it. They are getting water into the battery pack by penetrating the battery pack. And then that line is cooling the rest of the inside of the car.
Wow.
So that's the high pressure water. He's applying the water directly into the battery pack. It's several thousand PSI. So here's an example. They lift the car up, put some cribbing there, and apply the water underneath. Now the fire's been extinguished. Now they have to get the car out of the parking garage. Luckily, there were no exposures, as you can see from that picture there. Now they're going to have to get the car out of there. They can't leave it down there in case it reignites. They want to get it out to the street. They're using dollies. They're going to put one on each wheel. These are common in the recovery business. The parking garage probably had them available in case they needed to move a disabled car. So now you're going to see them get the vehicle into the elevator.
No kidding.
Yep. I think they're lifting the car to get the dolly underneath here.
It's just looking at this. What else do you see by looking at this picture? How about breathing air? How about
most of the guys that are very close to the car stay on breathing air for the whole time. You will see occasionally a firefighter without their mask on, but you see the atmosphere is getting better as the video goes on, but it's still if you ran a meter in there, I'm sure there's a lot of CO in there because it's below grade.
Right.
So now they're going to get this thing in the elevator. The elevator is that green light over to the one side there.
Good Lord.
So there's a joke in here somewhere. How many firefighters does it take to get a car in an elevator? But now they ride up in the elevator, which I certainly would not recommend. But
tough guys, tough people.
Yeah, it's a short ride. So here they are. They're going to remove the vehicle from the elevator. They're using a winch, and the dumpster that you talk about, which I'll have a slide here after this, is right next door. Still taking the thermal readings to see if the battery is reignited, but you see they're going to load it in that dumpster for disposal. That dumpster happened to have a crane on it. That's what they're pulling the vehicle into the dumpster.
So this is just not for nothing, but this is commercially available in the United States.
Yep.
The difference is instead of having the crane, they have the traditional winch.
Yeah, this is one that was available in the UK. I took a picture off the interwebs to put it in the presentation, and then there's another one here, which has the crane on it. It also, as you see in the bottom picture there, and the bottom two pictures, you see there's a Storts connection. You can flood the dumpster, put the car in there, and flood it. Some of them have sprinkler heads all around the outside, so it just runs a shower over the car. Or you can flood it like that one in there. The crane picks it up and lowers it in there. These are available. I guess they started in Europe, and now I'm hearing from colleagues that they're available around the country. There's quite a few in play or on standby on the West Coast and throughout the interstate system over there.
The thing I saw was it had on the door, right? Mm-hmm. It had a gasket, like a 4-inch rubber. Right, heavy duty rubber part.
Yep.
So when you closed it and that slid, that sealed it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then when I saw it, it was like I think it was homemade. It had 2.5-inch ports rather than the Storts. Mm-hmm. But the same idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that this would help you if you had to get it off the highway, but you've got to have one of these available. I couldn't tell you if there's one available on the East Coast. I'm not familiar. They're not cheap either. It's not something you get away with for a couple of $1,000s unless you fabricate one yourself. Yeah. These look like they're all made for that. The one in the picture here is German. I'm sure it's made by a manufacturer over there and sold to the fire service or the police or the Turnpike Authority or whatever.
So it's going to have the price tag because of the orange stripe.
As soon as you paint it red and say it's for the fire service, the price doubles, right? Yeah,
absolutely. The other thing I saw from over there was over in Europe. All of a sudden you see it wasn't a farm tractor; it was like a payloader, right? A backhoe.
Yep.
And so they got this thing, right? They're putting it out. Backhoe comes over, digs a big pit, right? And then drives around gets to the front of it.
Like that one?
Yeah, just like that.
This is in Sacramento, California. They had a fire. They towed it off the highway. They brought it to the junkyard. They went back to the junkyard because the car was on fire. And the junkyard operator says, "Hey, hang on a second." And he went over and he dug a pit. And the fire department, whatever vehicles that were there, whatever apparatus was there, filled the pit with water. And they pushed the junkyard operator pushed the vehicle into the pit and let it sit there. So there's options. Now, I had the earlier slide. This is what they recommend. If you have one of these in your jurisdiction and it's being towed, if it's being towed back to the police station because of a serious injury accident and they're impounding it or something, please implore them, do not bring it inside. Put it outside, put it away from the barracks, do not put it inside the building for a while until it has a chance to off gas and potentially reignite. And again, the recovery people, if they're going to take it back to their yard and wait for the insurance company to come and take a look at it, please tell them 50 feet minimum, because you may get a call to go back and extinguish another fire. So yeah, you certainly have to, give that consideration. And this is just like something I found on the internet, somebody playing around. Let's see.
Let's go to, I don't want to, let's go to large storage.
Okay, yeah, I'm scrolling through the slides here. I'm going to get to it. I'm just going to continue along. Here's another one I saw online. This is not a Tesla option. I don't think Elon would like that very much. There's, to the point we're at here before we transition to BESS, there's a tremendous amount of research that's going on from NFPA, UL, and a lot of other FM and a lot of other places to kind of get their hands around protection schemes and the actual amount of hazard that these devices and this technology presents. We had a very significant fire in a bus in Connecticut. There's been some presentations on that. Paul Maycook, retired from the State Fire Marshal's Fire and Explosion Investigation Unit, does a great presentation on that bus fire. That was kind of first of its kind, and they even investigated it and come to find out it was contamination, water contamination in the battery. But there's buses, there's vehicles on ships. If you remember the Felicity Ace, a lot of high-priced European EVs coming over to this country to sell, and all of them are at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Portugal right now. Yeah. And other stuff in parking garages and other things. So there's a lot of research that's going on, but the technology is increasing and just far outpacing the research. And eventually they'll get caught up and they'll be able to recommend protection schemes and suppression practices and proper procedures and such. But right now, a lot of the stuff is practice as you go along. And if you experience something like New York and other cities, then they create the policy based on their experiences. And we'll talk about it at the end. There's a lot of information that FDNY and UL and NFPA is sharing based on stuff that's already happened or based on research that's been completed already. But there's a tremendous amount of research that's going on now. And these slides that I'm going through before I get to the battery energy storage stuff. One cautionary tale: if you have e-powered stuff on your apparatus, keep an eye on it. This is the only example I can find. It's not an epidemic, but this is the only example I could find. This was in New Zealand. That was their compartment where all their hydraulic extrication equipment was located, and it caught fire because a battery ran away. So, keep that in mind. If you have the stuff on your apparatus, be, very vigilant. If you smell or see something that's not right, take it out of service and replace the battery, get somebody to check on it, just in case you have a bad battery that runs away.
It's also the new engines. So the new engines have two huge batteries.
Yep.
Right. One's right behind the cab.
Yep.
Then the other one is underneath the deck.
Right. If you're looking at the electric apparatus. A couple more things before we go to BESS. This is disposal of batteries. These are batteries going to a recycling place. Dozens of 55-gallon drums full of batteries. Some of the batteries ran away and exploded. This wasn't a flatbed. This was a box trailer. Look at the picture on the right.
No kidding.
See the back door? So this truck was parked probably in a parking lot. Driver was probably going to the hotel or going to a diner to get something to eat. And one of the battery drums, or the drums of batteries, ran away, exploded. And during overhaul, the fire department tore the remaining skin off the box to finish overhauling the batteries. Coming soon to a construction site near you. Electric construction equipment. These are only small scale ones, I'm told, from the main manufacturers, the green ones, the orange ones, the other manufacturers. They're up to the size of payloaders and full size excavators, not just little skid steers and little mini excavators. Full size equipment at a construction site. So you may get called out to a construction site for a piece of equipment that's on fire, and you may have to call for additional water or tag a hydrant because of the amount of water you're going to need. All right, so let's get to e-batteries. Oh, recycling too. If you've got recycling place in your jurisdiction, here's a picture of a shredder with a battery that gets shredded, and now the shredder's on fire. So we all know that everybody properly disposes of their trash in the proper containers in the proper manner, right?
Of course.
That's everybody does that according to instructions. So if you get rid of a battery, you throw it in the trash, and your trash gets shredded and gets put in an incinerator, there's a good chance that the battery may result in a fire like this. This is a longer video, which I'm going to try to jump over here. All right, so EV, we're going to go to battery energy storage. All right, so we've talked about small, we've talked about medium in EVs, and we're going to talk about the larger installations now. Battery energy storage is everything from a single family home where you bring batteries into your home to run your house in the event of a power outage, or to peak shave and run some of your house during high demand days like we're having now with the weather. Or they're going to replace generators down the road 20 years. You won't have to buy a propane or a diesel generator for your house. You'll have batteries that'll run your house when the power goes out. That's a small scale one. The larger scale ones are utility size, where they bring them in to run neighborhoods before the grid can get out there, or to peak shave during high demand areas and times, especially out in the Southwest, where people are running swamp cooler size air conditioners all day because of the climate, and the grid can't handle it. So they bring these batteries in, so they charge them during the day with solar or wind, and they let the batteries run during the evening to allow the system to kind of recoup and so on. So back in 2019, there was an incident in Surprise, Arizona, which is well outside of Phoenix, but in that general vicinity in Arizona, where the installation in the background right here, you see there was a thermal runaway, an explosion that seriously injured several firefighters, and it was very eye-opening to the utilities as well as responders, where these things were going in everywhere and nobody really knew what was going on with them, other than, oh yeah, there's a box of batteries. There's just a lot of batteries in there. This incident opened a lot of eyes. And at the time, NFPA was about ready to release their standard on battery energy storage, which is NFPA 855, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But I want to show you a news video that kind of covers the incident itself. This is the aftermath of the incident. That box is supposed to be square. As you see, the door and everything is off kilter. The man door is up against the fence there. That fence has been replaced since the blast. And I'll let you watch this video here. We can get it started.
Of course, they're out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yes.
Well, that's not good. Just missing it. So, as I mentioned,
well, this is an older news report. With the exception of that one captain, the rest of the firefighters were back on the job. The captain is, the last I heard, he was in training. He's not able to go back out onto the trucks because of his injuries. He suffered a severe concussion, some broken bones, and other things. He was near the front of the door. They opened the door after several hours of metering. They weren't going to enter the box. They wanted to meter, and they wanted to see what was going on. So they opened that green door, and they were going to meter everything without the intention of setting foot inside the box. They were fully geared up, breathing apparatus. There was a hand line in place. They had meters and a thermal imaging camera, and that captain was at the front. And he said, when I got out there to interview him after the incident, he said, I saw a glowing dot in the middle of the thermal imaging camera, meaning a hotter, ignition source, so to speak, or a hotter area than the rest of the area that I could see on the screen. And he says, that's the last thing I remember until I picked myself up in a burning bush several feet away from where the door was. He was blown clear and on fire, and there was a scrub brush away from the installation that caught fire, and his another firefighter on his crew brought the hand line out there, put the shrubbery and the captain out.
Did it blast him right through the fence?
It blew him through the fence, yes. So he was the most severely injured, and he now goes on the lecture circuit. I saw him speak again. I had a chance to reacquaint myself with him a few weeks ago up in Boston, and he's doing well, all points considering. He wants to go back on the job, but his injuries are such that I don't think he can get signed off on it. But now he's an advocate for learning about these things. In 2019, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there. The utilities were putting these things out there, and they were learning as they went as well. The technology was solid. They were going to go put these things out in the areas where they needed them. But the protection schemes and other things hadn't caught up yet. It was just gaseous suppression. There were no sprinklers. The alarm would go off, the fire department would show up, the gaseous suppression system had gone off, but we know it smothers the fire, but again, it doesn't cool it. In this case here in Surprise, the fire kind of reignited again over the course of time while they were metering and doing research and asking for advice from the utility and the manufacturers and such. And they were gathering more data when the batteries exploded. And I think it was one of these things where it was too rich in there. When they opened the door, it went down through the stoichiometric curve and became just rich enough, or just that perfect combination of air and gas. There was an ignition source in there, and they had an explosion. So these are what these systems look like, just battery racks and upon racks upon racks. You saw in the video from the news account, the men with the flash masks on and everything, they were taking that system apart. They built a building over this building and decommissioned all the batteries that were in there. It took a couple of months to do that. And they took each one of them out. They discharged the battery using some type of capacitor device. And they had a large tank of water inside there. If something ran away, they were to throw the battery in the water tank. And they took each of those batteries out and decommissioned them before they completely demolished the thing and rebuilt another one on that site. So this is what they look like inside. Just different, scale sizes. Some of them the size of buildings, and others are smaller, like the size of small, tool sheds or phone booths or something like that, depending on what they're going to be used for. There's different technologies. Lithium ion is only one of them, but there are many different ways. Here's a huge industrial size, or let's say utility size system put in Canada. Every one of those white boxes is a battery energy storage system on its own. And you see they're feeding into the grid. You can see the substation right there. You can find them at charging stations. If there's no grid out there and they're going to put a charging station, they'll bring a battery energy storage thing in that will supply the power to the charging station, and then they'll recharge the batteries using solar or wind or something like that to keep the batteries charged. So they don't need to bring the electricity out in the middle of nowhere. If you want to put an EV station at a rest area out in the middle of the desert, you don't need to bring the power out there. You bring the batteries in a solar farm and it charges the batteries. Here's a portable one they can bring into a neighborhood that might get decimated by a storm. To bring power into the neighborhood, they have them on trucks, flatbed trucks. And here's one for a household. This is an all-in-one. You can see the solar panel outside the door there, but there's a place to charge your EV, and these batteries will run your house. So you can be off the grid and power your house with using these things.
We have a lot of houses that have gone to solar panels. Do they have a small version of this battery inside?
You'd have to check. The systems are all different. It depends on how they're designed. Many of them have batteries. That's what the solar brings in, brings the power in, charges the batteries, and then at certain times you can run off the batteries in the home. Other times it's straight to the house, and what you're not using, they give back to the grid, and that's how you pay for the thing. I think more and more of these systems are going to have batteries included in them because it makes sense, because then you're powering your own house. You're not using utility power. Or if you go off the grid, if you don't want to be on the grid, you have a camp or a vacation home or something, you can do something along those lines. So it behooves you to pre-plan. If you see solar panels going up on a single house or in a development or on apartments or condos or townhouses, it's worth the effort to stop and get some information for pre-planning, because there's a whole other lecture on solar and photovoltaics. About shutting these systems down, and then when they're shut down, they're not shut down. The panels are still collecting energy and so on. Know where the shutoffs are, and your shutoffs are basically from the panels into the building, but not the panels themselves, unless you cover the panels. But like I said, that's a whole other lecture for down the road. This standard from NFPA covers battery energy storage from design to decommissioning. And it has a section in there on 1 and 2 family dwellings, as well as, I'm going to get to the annexes here, firefighting considerations and hazards. So if you can get this standard or take a look at it online, it has a lot of stuff in it that is pertinent to the fire service. If you hear through your zoning and planning that there's one of these systems coming into your neighborhood, it's probably a good idea to sit down with your building official, your fire official, maybe your electrical inspector, if you have one that's separate from those two agencies, and the planning and zoning people, and say, all right, this is what we're taking on here. We have to make sure that these folks, that when they come in to install it, it's tested to a UL standard, it's installed to NFPA 855, and they're going to take care of it. There's a plan in place that if there's a fire there, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to handle it, and so on and so forth. So this standard has all that information in it.
Does the NEC toss you towards this?
Yes, absolutely. The latest issue of the NEC, edition of the NEC, brings you to 855 and vice versa. Okay. So the actual nuts and bolts installation of it from the electrical side is in the National Electrical Code, and then the global picture for battery energy storage is in 855. So tell your code people that these two documents will give you a very good basis for what you need to be looking at. And most of these folks, when they come into your neighborhood, if you say, listen, show me all the documentation that this product has been tested to UL and it's being installed to 855. And if they're worth their weight, they're going to say, oh, absolutely. Here's the documentation. Here's the testing data. All of our stuff is built to this and tested to this. Then it makes you feel a little better that you're dealing with people that are on the up and up. If they come in and say, oh, yeah, we do all our own testing and we do this and we do that, be cautious. Hold their feet to the fire and make them produce the paperwork that says that their product is tested and installed to all of these national standards and tested accordingly. So the fire code will get you there as well. NFPA 1 or IFC or what have you will get you to these two standards as well. There's the electrical code. I want to get to a couple of things in closing here. We got about 15 minutes to go. Your utility, if it's the utility that's installing it and not a third-party person, the utility will get you some training. This is something from National Grid. I'm sure Eversource has something very similar. They have training available. This is an online class that National Grid does. I'm sure Eversource has something similar. Another paid political announcement from the NFPA. We have a lot of stuff on our website on battery energy storage. There's some training modules in there. There's some downloadable cut sheets that you can use to train your firefighters or to train your government officials, your building official, your planning and zoning people and such about the emerging technologies and the potential hazards that these things have within.
So, Bob, could you do me a favor? Go back
Yep.
1 second.
Yep.
Let's give everybody a chance to get their cell phones out. And
Yep, they want to do that. Absolutely. And I'm going to provide this, like I mentioned before we went on the air, Nick, I'm going to give these links and QR codes to you folks. So if you want to create a handout or something that's available to the folks that are watching or will be watching when this gets posted, all of these things will be in there. So if you don't have your hands on your cell phone this instant, come back and JLN will provide this stuff for you later. I have a handout that includes all of the links that we've talked about. NFPA, FDNY, UL, and several others. Connecticut Fire Academy has produced some stuff as well. All of that stuff I'll make available to you.
Thank you.
Right. So this is stuff from FDNY. A lot of the videos that you're seeing here are the QR codes that are posted here. So these are downloadable. I'll show you that link in just a little bit. These are all training sheets from them on e-bikes, charging stations, more e-bike stuff, EVs, charging stations for EVs. This Google Drive and this QR code is available to anyone, and it's all of the proceedings from a symposium they held a couple of years ago where I filmed that battery running away inside that Connex box. They made all this available on a Google Doc or Google Drive that anybody can download. So if you take this QR code or take this link, or when they make the handout available, you can go to and download presentations, videos, cut sheets. The SOP from FDNY on e-bike response is there. It's only a couple of pages. You can download it and make it work for your agency if that's what you want to do, or just get it for some training purposes. Public education. Fire departments, you get phone calls a lot, especially around Christmas time. You mentioned the hoverboard. Several years ago, people were calling NFPA going, I want to get a hoverboard for my kid or my grandchild or my niece, my nephew, but I hear there's bad things. NFPA had some hoverboard fact sheets that we were making available, and our public education desk reference now has a chapter on lithium-ion batteries. So your pub ed people can get this from NFPA, and there's talking points and training education points for lithium-ion batteries for the pub ed folks in your agencies. More information for lithium-ion batteries. I think, one more. This is an easy one. /e-bikes. All micro mobility stuff from NFPA. All free downloadable single-page sheets that you can use in your agencies or to give to your public. You can post them on your website. You can actually put your logo on the sheets. Might have one here. Yeah, maybe. You can put your logo on it and post it, or make copies and give them out at events, or put it on your social media, and people can download it, or you can point to it and say, oh, you want to get an e-bike? Go to our Facebook page. There's a post there. EVs. This is some stuff on EVs from NFPA. Free training that's available. It was from a Fire Act grant. Go to our website. Again, this will be available afterwards. So online training, more online training, paid training, response guides. There's a link on the NFPA webpage. If you can't find a response guide for an EV in your area, I know there's an app for that. There's plenty of stuff out there. By all means, put it on your phone, put it on your tablets in your trucks so you know where to cut, where not to cut. But if you're just looking for something in general, this isn't very user-friendly in the field. But if you're looking for something to just download for training, all of the response guides that have been made available to us, including the construction equipment, is available on this webpage. So if you go to our webpage and type in emergency response guides in the search bar, it'll take you here. There's the QR code. But again, this will be made available afterwards. The iChiefs have a webpage that has a ton of information on there as well. You can go there, just go to the iChiefs webpage. If you're a member, you can log in and it'll take you here. And it has a lot of stuff that's downloadable. There's some training updates and so forth. This is another one for community-based stuff, EV Fire Safe. It's based in Australia, but all the stuff is pretty pertinent to what we're dealing with in this country as well. They're great for statistics. If you're looking to make a pitch for something and you need some statistics to back up your pitch, this is the place to go. And this is the Connecticut Fire Academy stuff. 2 years ago now, a committee of folks got together and put these 3 downloadable sheets together. One's on micromobility, one's on EVs and hybrids, and one's on battery energy storage. And quick hit, helpful resources for the fire department, good training stuff, tabletop training in the station, good discussion points, and best practices, I guess, is probably the best thing I could call that.
Wait a minute, you just blew by the boys.
Yeah. There's Fenton, and there's SpongeBob going to work at the fire station. Yeah, Fenton's a hoot. He's a great guy. If you get a chance to stop by their booth anywhere, he's wonderful. And so's his partner in crime there with fire department coffee.
We actually had them on.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Awesome.
They're wonderful.
They didn't bring the mustaches though.
No,
I won't let the secret out, but that's not real. In that picture of the 2 of us, there's only one real mustache.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
I actually thought it was real when I ran into him, and then I saw
he wears
him
it well.
it off.
He wears it well. Here's my contact information just before I unshare my screen, and I'm sure you folks will make it available as well. Real easy. R. Duvall at NFPA. So let me stop sharing so we get back to the gang here, because I know we're getting close to
I want to
closing,
try to.
So.
I know you. We want to help to be. We start by saying we really appreciate you, given the circumstances, to take the time to be on with us tonight. Does anybody have any quick questions for Bob?
Looks like we've got one question. Dave is wondering, he's asking Bob if there's any research that the Class B foam is effective or any other foams.
Great question.
I can't point to any specific research right off the top of my head. But just like anything else, foam makes it better, but you have to be careful what type of foam you're using and so on. I'm not sure off the top of my head if there's actual research out there. There may be. It may require a Google search to do that. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't seen anything through my channels, but it may be worth a look. I would try looking at the UL site for batteries, as well as the NFPA Research Foundation site. I can't recall anything through NFPA involving foam, but it may be. I know they're working on sprinkler protection, especially for parking garages and things like that, for especially EVs, because there's been some catastrophic fires in parking garages around the world where the garage has to be demolished because it completely spalls, all the concrete spalls and it fails and so on. Applying any type of suppression in that case to cool it down below that temperature would be beneficial, but I can't recall seeing anything recently about foam.
All right. Thank you, Dave. So listen, Bob, I want to just say thank you so much. As always, you're right there when I need you. And this was all I could hope for and more.
This is a 3-hour program. We crammed it into an hour and a half. So I'm sorry if I talk like an auctioneer. But
No, but you answered all the questions I had. So
yeah, so it's out there. It's available. If if you're looking for information or you want to get pointed in the right direction, there's a lot of subject matter folks out there that are great on this topic, that know more about this than I do, or that focus on just EVs or just battery energy storage.
right.
And there's a ton of stuff made available every month in the trade periodicals. I believe this month or last month in fire engineering, there was an article about battery fires and such. Just keep reading, keep looking online, and if you're still old school like me and still get the paper copy of the magazines, take a look at it. And people are coming up with new and creative ways to help themselves and battle these fires. But as fast as we come up with the solutions, technology is going to outpace us. That's what we're up against, and that's what New York City was up against 2 or 3 years ago, and now they're trying to catch up the best they can, and so is the rest of us.
It's crazy.
Yep.
So I'm only going to do. So I'm just going to do one commercial. Speaking of New York City, so next month, August 21st, regular time, 7 p.m. We're going to have Deputy Assistant Chief Frank Lieb. As you guys know, we try to do a program revolving around cancer and exposure to the fire service. We try to do it every year. We've been successful some years, sometimes, and others not. However, he just became an administrator or director of some organization, but I went to a program where he talked about, it was a tactical program all about how to stay safe from cancer, and he did a great job of tying that stuff together. I'm very fortunate he's agreed to come on. So that'll be August 21st, 7 p.m. And that'll be also a great show. He has decided to retire. Well, he has put his papers in, but we've also just learned that the commissioner is leaving. So I don't know if he'd be in the pecking order or in that line, but he is very well known, very, very good at what he does. So I think we're going to go back to old school and pull from the line. So we'll see what happens with that. So I might be introducing him as another thing. But he does a great job. We're going to hold off on announcing any other guests at this time. But we'll make sure that we get that stuff out. And again, Bob, thanks for not only for coming, but for supporting us.
Yep.
I mean, every you take care of the Northern Tier for us every month, and we really do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, please give our best to your members and to the family.
I will.
And I pray that everything goes well over the next few days.
Yeah, I'm going to thank the troops for being quiet in the background here outside the office, and not
good.
starting up the positive pressure fan just outside the door while we were trying to do a podcast here. I will share all of that information, Jamie, tomorrow, so you can get it up to wherever you need to do, or make it part of the package when you post this. It'll be all those QR codes that were at the end and links to our webpage, FDNY, UL, and all of that. It's in one handout that you can post however you see fit.
Excellent. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
See you next time.